I found out I had a daughter in a hospital hallway while my wife fought for her life 2 doors down. And the name the nurse used for me was a nickname only one person knew half a century ago. A week before that, I bought my old Dodge back at a farm auction and opened the glove box to a letter I was meant to read in 1974. The man who married the girl I loved wrote that letter, and he asked me to meet them at the station I didn't go to. If you think your past is buried, it isn't. It's idling in your driveway, waiting for you to turn the key. Hey folks, it's Jack Carter from Nazvanya Kanala. Before I start, I need 30 seconds of your patience. 96% of you who watch me aren't subscribed. 96. That number sits heavy on me, heavier than a transmission on a floor jack. Do the practical thing, hit subscribe, tap like, leave a comment. That's how this old man keeps the lights on and justifies pointing a camera at himself in his garage. I was 19 in 1973 and thought the state line was a finish line with my name painted on it. I slept above Crawford's garage off Route 42 in a room with a single window that rattled when semis rolled by at night. I could tell the time by smells: burnt coffee at 5, gear oil at 6, cigarettes and fryer grease drifting from the Bluebird Diner by 7. I drove a sun-faded '69 Dart with a passenger door that needed a lift and a shove, like you were coaxing a stubborn dog onto a porch. The radio worked when it felt like it. I kept a butter knife in the glove box to pry stuck 8-tracks. Lily Parker walked into the Bluebird one humid June afternoon and fiddled with the jukebox like she had permission. She picked track B7 Sam Cooke and made the room sound more honest. Brown hair up with a pencil. Eyes quick like she didn't want to miss any of the life happening in front of her. Danny Burke, my best friend since we were mud-covered kids misjudging creek depth, whistled under his breath and said, "You're going to say something stupid, aren't you?" I said, "Probably," and I did. I told her the milkshakes were best if you asked for extra malt. Like I had some stake in malt sales. Lily laughed and said I had oil on my cheek. I said I knew and left it there, so I'd have an excuse to stay. At 19, love is a foot on the accelerator. We kept catching fire. After the night shift, I'd park by the water tower where the paint peeled and you could see the whole town like a toy set. We'd sit on the hood, pass a bag of warm peanuts, and pretend trains were talking to us in Morse code. She said she was tired of small talk that went nowhere and wanted a life where the calendar didn't boss her around. I said California like I'd seen it, when really all I'd seen was a picture in a magazine taped to the garage wall. A sunlit highway, the ocean pretending to behave. By August, I had work lined up outside Joliet. Mr. Crawford knew a guy who needed an extra pair of hands, and my hands were cheap. I told Lily we could split a one-bedroom, cook spaghetti on Sunday nights, and learn the city by the names of its smells. She said yes, like she was surprised by her own mouth. Then the phone call came on a Wednesday from my mother, who never called the garage unless someone needed a casserole. "Your father's on the floor." That was the whole message. I drove to Mansfield General with my shirt inside out and oil under every fingernail. The waiting room had vinyl chairs that shocked your elbows and a TV that never decided which channel to be. "Stroke," the doctor said, and the words sounded like dropped steel. My father was a stubborn man who believed apologies were a kind of tax. He scowled at me from a tilted mouth, and I didn't know where to put my hands. I didn't have time to drive back to the diner. I wrote Lily a note on a ticket book, block letters twice as big as usual so there'd be no mistaking. Dad. Hospital. Back Friday. I love you. Meet you Saturday at the station. I slid it under the sugar caddy at booth 3, where she always sat to count tips. The world should be able to handle a note under a sugar caddy. That's a small ask. It stormed like the sky was rearranging itself. Gutters spat leaves. Nurses padded around in crepe soles. My father slept, then woke up meaner, then slept again. On Friday, I drove like a thief back to town. The note wasn't there. Martha, who worked nights, looked over her glasses and said, "Busboy must have tossed it with the placemats." I ran to Lily's house on Carroll. Her dad opened the door like it hurt him. "She's not here," he said. "And if she was, she's not going anywhere with you." Saturday, I went to the station anyway. Sat on a bench that had a bolt missing. Watched buses exhale and inhale and then leave. A kid with a red balloon kept losing it and his mom kept grabbing the string. I waited until the clock made a full revolution. She didn't come. It's a long walk home when the we becomes I again. What happens next is what always happens when you're young and dumb and prideful. Letters, phone calls nobody picks up, a drive past a dark house so late you feel stupid in your own skin. 2 weeks later, I saw her at the McIntyre wedding in a pale blue dress. There was a ring on her finger. Danny stood beside her with a tie he never quite learned to tie right. Ashland doesn't invent new headlines. It runs the old ones until the ink fades. We didn't talk. I drove back to my room at Crawford's and slept like someone had shut me down with a switch. I moved to Joliet before the first frost. The shop was a cinder-block square that coughed heat out of one of those orange glowing space heaters that smell like melted pennies. I learned to pull a carb in gloves, fingertips numb, and to drink coffee so black the spoon complained. On Sundays, I drove Route 6 until the fields replaced the town and the radio went to static. I pretended I liked the empty. I didn't. I just didn't know what to do with the full. In '79, I met Marianne in Payless between a pyramid of shoeboxes and a rack of boots that looked like they'd injure anybody who owned them. She was laughing, which is a sound that should be bottled and sold to all the tired people. Her eyes were brown and clear, and she asked me if those boots would make me 6 foot like an elevator. I said I was happy at 5'10" if I could keep the same view. We did our ordinary life right. Parma apartment with popcorn ceiling, then a little house with a backyard that could support exactly 1 tomato plant and a persnickety lilac. We nearly missed a mortgage payment in '88. Ate a lot of rice that month. Didn't miss another. Love like that doesn't get a movie. It should. It's 2 people pushing the same grocery cart through years, stopping at the same small arguments and trusting the habit of kindness. I sold the Dart in '88 for cash I needed more than a memory. I told myself the goodbye was adulthood. It wasn't. It was a delay. Last spring, time folded the map the wrong way. A buddy from the VFW mentioned a farm auction out on Honey Creek. Old trucks, maybe a Dart. We went for the exercise of pretending we wouldn't buy anything. There it was under a rind of dust. The door still needed that ridiculous lift and shove. The dash had a sun crack you could fit a nickel in. The farm kid wanted 600. I said 5. We did the old man haggling dance and met in the middle like gentlemen. Back in my garage, the glovebox handle stuck at the last millimeter. I coaxed it with a flathead. The door popped like a sigh. One envelope stuck to the threadbare carpet by the fossil of a peppermint that had died on that spot 30 years ago. Jack in block letters that were not Lily's. January 8th, 1974, at the top. Danny's name at the bottom. He wrote plain because he always did. He'd found my note at the diner after Lily's father tossed it and had a fit. Lily thought I'd run. She was late, scared. He was going to marry her because her father threatened to toss her and a baby into winter. He didn't know if the baby was mine or his, and figured it didn't matter as much as a hot furnace. and a name on the birth certificate. If I wanted to talk like men, he'd be at the Ashland station with Lily on Saturday at 3, and they'd wait an hour. "Forgive me," he wrote, and then again, because once didn't feel like enough. I stood in my garage and watched 2 Saturdays overlay in my head, like misprinted newspaper pages. The one where I waited alone in September, and the one in January, when he waited with her, while I worked in Joliet and stared at a clock I pretended not to see. I had wandered off the track of my own life and believed I was still driving. I put the letter in my pocket like it was hot. Then I walked inside, poured 2 coffees, and told Marianne the truth from the beginning. The diner, the storm, the station, the wedding, the Danny letter crinkling in my pocket. She listened the way she always listens, first to the bad version of me, and then waits for the better one to show up. When I was done, she said one sentence. "Then we find them." We didn't get to start the search that day. 2 mornings later, Marianne dropped in the kitchen like someone had unplugged the room. I dialed 911 and did compressions counting loud and steady, the way the dispatcher told me. Metro Health, clot, luck. That word doesn't feel like luck when it's coming from a doctor at 3 in the morning. First night, I left her sleeping and stepped into the hallway that smells like bleach and new plastic. A nurse in blue scrubs came over with a blanket, one of those warmed ones that smell like clean cotton. I said thanks. She nodded like my voice was familiar. "Are you Jack Carter?" she asked. "Buck?" Nobody had said Buck to me in 50 years. Lily used to call me that once when I fought a flooded mower, like it had insulted my mother. The nurse had a name tag that read April. Eyebrows that refused to behave. Left ear with a little bend at the top, the same dumb bend I've had since birth, like the factory messed one up and let it pass inspection. She came back with forms and closed the door. "I have something, but only if you promise not to fall down," she said. She told me her full name, April Parker Burke. Born at Mansfield General in September of 1974. Mother Lillian, who likes to play old songs on tinny radios in June. Father Daniel, who taught her to bleed brakes and to say sorry with both words and acts. She said when she was 10, she asked about the nickname Buck, and got a paragraph that ended with, "He was kind, and it wouldn't have helped to know more." She said she heard my last name at the desk, and her stomach did a new thing. I said Marianne's in 413, and I'm not leaving until she walks out under her own steam. But after that, yes, we should sit down with your mother and scrape the barnacles off the truth. April laughed, and it was a laugh with edges like mine. "You're stubborn," she said. "Figures." Marianne woke enough to squeeze my hand twice. Our code for I'm here. When I told her about April, she cried, then bossed me. "Go. You sitting here won't move the lab results any faster. Go meet your history and bring whatever you find back to me." April drove. The house off State Road had daisies in a jar, like the world intended them for jars. Lily opened the door, and time didn't so much stop as it sat down and rubbed its knees. She said my name soft and steady. We put elbows on a round table with a cigarette burn at noon. Then we told the truth, clumsy first, then clean. She never got my note. Her father found it and told her I'd run. She threw a glass, and it didn't fix anything. Danny showed up with his hat in his hands and said he would stand there so someone could be yelled at who wasn't her. He said he'd marry her so the town would hush and winter wouldn't get in. She didn't love him then. She loved him later because he showed up and kept showing up. She wanted to tell me, and then days piled up, the way days do, and the pile got taller than either of us. She asked if I hated her. I said no. I asked if she hated me. She said no. April set photo albums on the table like offerings. I saw birthdays and skinned knees and a science fair volcano that blew foam and made April look like she'd invented the moon. I saw Danny in the margins of pictures, like a man proud of a job he knew he hadn't been born to do, but did anyway. I went to see Danny at the VA home on Brecksville. His mind was thin around the edges, but he could still snap a handshake like a trap. He blinked at me like he was refocusing an old camera. Kid who drove on bald tires, he said. I always meant to get that letter to you. Sold the Dodge to Hank over on 58, and he promised to hand it over. Then life. Then 100 short errands. Forgive me. He said he loved Lily like a bridge functional, grateful, always aware some other man laid the first stones. I told him I didn't hate him. We sat in a silence that didn't need padding. Marianne came home after 12 days with a bottle that rattled and instructions to walk to the mailbox each afternoon. April came over the first Sunday we had her home and carried in lasagna, like she'd been to 1,000 homes and learned 1,000 ways to arrive. She and Marianne took to each other like they'd agreed to years ago without knowing it. That steadied me in a way I can't measure. You'd think that would be the ending. It wasn't. Life keeps a spare twist in the glove box. Ours was in a jewelry box in our bedroom. Marianne handed it to me a week after she came home. Inside, a folded letter with her handwriting from 2017. She'd run into Lily at a church rummage sale during Old Town days. They recognized each other stepping over crock pots and orphan lids. Lily had told her the thinnest outline of the story and had asked if she should find me. Marianne had said not yet because that was the year my mother went downhill and my sister moved, and my hands were already full of the fragile things. In the letter, Marianne wrote that not yet tasted wrong the minute she said it. If life ever brought April to us, she wrote, I should trust my feet to walk toward, not away. We cried at the kitchen table with dish towels folded in precise squares, because apparently we're the kind of people who keep folding while the world rearranges itself. Then we did something that made us both feel younger than our joints. We decided to fix the Dart together. The three of us, me, April, and Marianne, in a lawn chair, with a glass of lemonade and a whistle if we got too ambitious. April learned the sound of a good idle by, listening with her eyes closed. She has my listening face. We pulled the carb, rebuilt it on a tray like it was a patient. She torqued down the valve cover bolts a quarter turn past, where I told her to because she said, it felt right. That's hereditary too. Ignoring advice when your hands tell a different truth. When the engine finally settled into a polite thrum, we looked at each other and grinned the same grin from 2 lifetimes apart. 2 weeks later, because the world isn't content without one more reveal, April knocked on the garage door with a white envelope. I don't need this, she said, but I want to know. Paternity test. I'm not proud to say my hands shook. I'm also not ashamed. We swabbed. We mailed. We pretended we didn't watch the mailbox. We watched the mailbox. Marianne walked with me, slow and steady, like she'd been assigned this duty by a judge with a kind face. Results came back with words like probability and index and numbers, with too many nines. I sat at the table and read them out loud to the only 2 people who needed to hear them. April squeezed my hand, same 2 squeezes as Marianne's code. Then, she did something I didn't plan for. She called me Dad and laughed, because it felt both right and new, and we agreed she could use any name any day that matched the weather of her heart. I told her father's a verb, and Danny was the man who conjugated it every morning for decades. We agreed we could hold 2 truths without one pushing the other off the table. There were other small twists I didn't expect. The farm kid who sold me the Dart turned out to be Martha's grandson. He remembered a coffee can full of mismatched sugar caddies in his grandma's basement when they cleaned out the diner before it got turned into a chain sandwich shop. He said there was a tarnished spoon stuck to the bottom of the can with something sweet that had turned bitter. The Bluebird burned down in '95 after a fryer fire. Nobody was hurt. We drove past the new sandwich place and pretended not to look. April had kept something from me too, and it wasn't a bad thing, just a thing that felt like another door opening. She had a son, Caleb, 10, skinny knees, hair that wouldn't be told where to go. He likes baseball cards and asking serious questions about unserious topics. First time he saw the dart, he asked if it was as fast as it sounded in the stories. I said nothing is as fast as it sounds in stories, but we could make it respectable. He asked if I could teach him to change oil. I handed him a wrench and told him, step 1 is knowing where to put the pan. We took a drive me, April, Caleb out to the water tower that had been painted fresh but still looked tired to me. I told him about the hood of the car on summer nights and the train sounds and how the stars looked like a mistake someone left in the sky. Caleb asked if I kissed Lily up there. April said, Caleb, with that warning note mothers keep in their throat. I said yes once, and he nodded like that was the right number and the conversation could proceed. We visited the VA home together. Danny looked smaller in his chair that day. April hugged him and told him, we weren't here to take anything away. We were here to add. He cried like men cry when their chins don't want to be involved. He told Caleb a story about getting stuck in a ditch outside Shelby, and how April, at 6, had handed him tools from the back seat with the seriousness of a nurse in an operating room. He called me kid again and told me my hairline was doing what hairlines do. I told him he hadn't exactly outrun his either. We played gin and both cheated and pretended not to notice. There were complications because people are complicated. Lily's father was gone by then. That made some parts easier and some parts sadder in a way that surprised me. I spent one morning parked outside a house I hadn't been to since I was 19. It had new siding and the same old maple out front. I wanted to be mad at a ghost. That's a poor use of a morning. I drove to the cemetery instead and said the kind of prayer you say when you don't want to admit you're saying one. Marianne had a day where the pills made her dizzy and the world seemed like a poorly aligned car that pulls left. I sat her in the shade and told her all the ways I loved her that didn't show up in the tall parts of the story. Tuesday folding laundry, Friday bills, the stupid little dance we do when we both reach for the same pot lid. She said she wasn't losing me to the past. She was lending me out to it so the present could be steadier. If you're looking for a definition of marriage, that one works. I started filming again for the channel. I thought I'd post a simple carb rebuild. Instead, I told the story I'm telling you now, out loud, to a lens I pretended was a person who needed it. I expected the usual handful of comments about timing marks and a couple arguments about whether I'd over-tightened something. Instead, the comments filled up with people talking about their own sugar caddies, their own missed Saturdays, their own letters that turned up in drawers that hadn't been opened since the first Bush was president. Some of you said you made phone calls you'd put off. Some of you went to stations. Some of you checked glove boxes. I read everyone, even the ones that hurt a little. Lily started coming over on Sundays with potato salad and a cake that defies science by being both heavy and light. April shows up with a laundry basket of things she swears she'll mend if she sits still long enough. Caleb runs the dog around the yard until both of them collapse under the lilac. Sometimes we argue about nothing, because that's what families do when the stakes are low and the heart is high. There was one more Saturday we needed to fix. The station from January 1974 had become a bus stop with a new bench and a bad paint job. We went there anyway. Me, Lily, April, Marianne, in a sensible coat, Caleb with a baseball cap on crooked. We stood at 3 o'clock and waited an hour. A bus came and went and another. An old man fed pigeons with the efficiency of a ritual. We didn't say much. When the hour was up, Lily took my hand and said, "There." She meant we'd repaired something that didn't look repairable. We were people who had kept an appointment, even if it was 49 years late. We went for pie and didn't talk about it like it was fragile. We let it be ordinary. After that, April and I did more practical things. Wills, health proxies, phone numbers exchanged with nurses on sticky notes that got transcribed to phones by people who know better. I showed her how to set torque by feel. She showed me how to order medication refills without making it a novel. We put our names on each other's lists in small boxes labeled emergency. Life is an emergency that proceeds calmly when you prepare for it. If you're waiting for me to carve a moral into the air, I won't. I'm too old to issue commandments. I will say this. Don't trust time to do your errands. It's lazy about the important ones. If you write a note, hand it to a person who is looking at you. If you're asked to meet at a station, go. And go on the day, not on the day after. Don't sell a car without checking the glove box. Don't assume you're the villain in someone else's story or the hero either. Sometimes you're the guy who forgot to open an envelope, and your whole life spent years adjusting to that. I'm going to land this plane the same way I took off plain and honest. Thank you for listening to an old mechanic use his words instead of his wrenches. If this hit you where you live, subscribe. I mean it. 96% of you aren't subscribed, and I feel that number in my sternum. Hit like so the algorithm doesn't treat me like I'm yelling into an empty shop. Leave a comment and tell me about the letter you found, the station you went back to, the person you forgave who didn't know they were waiting for it. I read them. I'll be here next week. Same stool, same light, a little steadier, a little braver, grateful for the chance to get it more right on the second pass. Now go call the person whose number you still know by heart.